This is the Relevant Podcast.
It's episode 1214, and it's the Relevant Podcast here in Orlando. I'm your host, Cameron Strang, and joining me from Loverland, Virginia, is Jesse Carey.
Hello, hello. I was just trying to compensate with a very baritone, healthy voice.
Oh my gosh. Thanks a lot. From Nashville, our managing editor, downtown Emily Brown.
Hey, y'all.
And the guys are off today. Yeah, sorry, listeners. I will do my best to not talk very much so it doesn't grate your ears. I have downed quite a bit of medicine, several bags of Luden's wild cherry lozenges. Wasn't working. I was almost inaudible about 2 hours ago. My voice was so bad. We have a cold front going through Florida. I'm not sick. It's just
that's what they always say.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel fine. Okay, well, I feel fine. Anyway, knowing we had to record, I was like, what do I do about my voice? And Emily's like, you need to have hot tea. I was like, you're making huge assumptions that I have in my life purchased and own in my home hot tea. I don't know where you get hot tea. And she's like, everywhere, first of all. But I don't have any hot tea. But this morning I was like, I've got to do something. I think I'm going to go down to Starbucks. And I got their medicine ball. You know, it's not on the menu. But I've had it like 10 years ago. It was fantastic.
I don't know about this beverage.
It's an off-menu thing. It's called the medicine ball, and it's a combination of hot tea, honey,
lemonade.
What else is
I
it?
think
Lemonade.
I think there's maybe something else in there, but it is whatever it is. I get it whenever I start feeling like a sore throat or something, and it pretty much always heals me.
Oh, it's got antioxidants. It's unbelievable. And so I got it, and I was very excited, and I knew I had a time crunch, and so I took a big old sip. And did not realize that it would be 8,000 degrees, burn my mouth so painfully bad. Right now, I can feel the top of my mouth gums just dripping. It like my mouth is that scene from Raiders of the Lost Ark where they open the Ark of the Covenant. That's what's happening inside my mouth right now because the freaking medicine ball was so hot. So now I don't feel good. Thanks a lot, Starbucks.
That makes sense. But I was very confused momentarily because Emily said that Cameron burned his mouth on a medicine ball. And I was thinking like the big weighted ball that like prize fighters in the 1940s used to like work out with. I was like, how does one burn their mouth on a medicine? One, I didn't know you owned a medicine ball. I feel like that's a pretty antiquated piece of fitness
frankly,
equipment.
It's more likely that I would own a medicine ball than have tea bags in my house.
Which is wild.
Yeah, well, it makes more sense now that you didn't burn it on, like a piece of workout equipment that strongmen who had handlebar mustaches and unitards in the 1920s worked out with.
All they had was kettlebells and medicine balls. And,
they're pretty limited there. They're pretty, yeah. And each other's body weights. Like for some reason, one of them was always on the other one's shoulders with like his arms out. Like,
do you remember the episode
they had?
Of Seinfeld where Lloyd Bridges comes to get Jerry in shape? That's what I think of when I think of medicine ball. The Mandelbaums. Mandelbaum.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But I want to pivot real quick if it's okay, guys.
Take it away so I don't have to talk, please.
Okay.
Please.
I hope I didn't vet this, by the way, listeners. This is a topic that needs to be talked about, and I'm about to address it right now.
Oh no!
And so there's been a lot of news with Congress lately, and I know people are sick of hearing about it, but I think we need to address these hearings. And that hearing is obviously, I'm talking about the one that everybody's talking about, the unidentified anomalous phenomena exposing the truth hearing. That happened last week, and they're ramping back up the very day we're recording this, and the release of a report about strange occurrences that have been observed by the Pentagon. Literally no one is talking about this, and nobody cares.
I don't get it. Literally on record last week, I saw, like in a congressional hearing, them point blank ask these Defense Department officials and other experts, have we encountered intelligent life from other planets? And they said definitively on the record, yes.
Yes, these are. So I have spent way too much time, not just thinking about this topic, but on these, these congressional hearings in general. And so I'm going to give a brief primer on what was discussed that Cameron alluded to. And then I kind of want to kick around some thoughts to you guys. So, the initial congressional hearings that happened last Thursday, if you're listening to this, they had 4 expert witnesses. One was a NASA official. One was a retired rear admiral for the Navy, which for people who don't know their military ranks, that is a very high-ranking naval officer. The other was Luis Elizondo, who study this space. His name may be familiar because he's kind of the initial whistleblower that brought some things to the New York Times that they had printed a few years ago that started more of a national discourse on this. But he ran, in addition to being an Army intelligence officer, he also ran the Pentagon's in-house program they called Arrow, which looked at this phenomenon. Like, he was given a budget to go investigate what's going on. And the other witness was an investigative journalist who received a document that was an internal government report that was not supposed to be made public, but he got it from a whistleblower within the Pentagon. There's pretty good evidence that this is a legitimate document, and it's called Immaculate Constellation. And it is a document that contains numerous reports on numerous unexplained incidents of military officials encountering what they're calling NHI now. That's sort of the nomenclature, non-human intelligence. So in this hearing, these individuals not only talked about a variety of strange incidences encountering like orbs and, strange technologies that the military has documented. They also talked about private contractors, particularly Lockheed Martin, being in possession of some sort of off-world craft, and the suggestion that this non-human intelligence may have underwater ocean bases.
Is that because they see that things shoot into the ocean sometimes, so they think something's down there?
That's the assumption. They don't know where they're going. They've also seen really large objects underneath the surface of the water that
they're called blue whales.
Yeah, well, that's another hearing. Not as exciting. The blue whale hearing. So all of this, and one of the officials is actually saying, yes, we can confirm. We believe there are other species among us. So I've spent a lot of time thinking about this and reading a lot of perspectives on it. But before I dive into any of my theories, what are your guys' reactions just kind of hearing the overview of some of the details that were discussed in Congress? Because it really does seem like this is flying under the radar to most people in the media.
I think this is my personal hot take. I already knew this. I have always thought that there was extraterrestrial intelligent life out there. This is just kind of confirming what I already knew. So I feel like a lot of people we've just grown up assuming there's probably other life out there. So it's not as earth shattering, I guess, because the details are interesting. The ocean base, I'm terrified of the ocean and I will never enter the ocean. And I think it's because deep down, I always knew there was something down there that I'm not supposed to interact with.
Yeah, blue whales.
But the one interesting thing that have come out of these hearings and some of the recent kind of research into this is the idea that they're not openly suggesting that these craft or these beings come from outer space, that maybe they've been here all along.
Yeah.
And so that is sort of the implication of some of these recent findings.
That's where we've talked about the Skywalker Ranch show and stuff, and that's where my mind goes. It's one of those shows that you have to watch for an hour for there to be about 2 minutes of actual content to happen. Yeah. It's a lot of build up and flashbacks and stuff. It's really annoying to watch sometimes. But when they actually do things, there's scientific trackable phenomena and abnormalities that imply there's a portal. There's, things that are not of Earth origin happening, interacting with Earth, coming and going. And it's you see it. You literally, if you watch that show, you can see orbs and phenomena. You see the tracking. You see this weird kind of glass ceiling that's like invisible over this certain spot where it's like it deflects light in a weird way. And so you like, the more you watch it, the more you become comfortable with the idea that there is another realm of things interacting with Earth that we don't have understanding of. You talk to Christians who open-mindedly watch these shows, and they say, well, sure, the Bible talks about things all the time. Like in the Bible, there are certain places on Earth where heaven interacted with Earth,
Yeah.
And of course, those are ancient writers, and this is them trying to explain what they're seeing and experiencing in some respects. Obviously, we believe that everywhere is God breathed as well, but, like the oral tradition and stuff of like things happen here, and it's like a Skywalker Ranch, one of those types of places, Well, and then, we believe in angelic, sightings, we, be not afraid, these big orbs in the sky. We believe that there's beings if you read the Bible and you're a Bible believing Christian, there's unexplained phenomenon happening all over the place. And the fact that it's still happening today, well, it happened then, it happened today. What are we surprised about here?
Yeah. The concept of non-human intelligence is central to
the Christian faith.
Yeah, exactly. Particularly in the Old Testament. So are you guys interested in me laying out my theory? If we don't want to theorize.
Interested. If you're a Riley Clemmons fan who tuned in to hear Riley Clemmons talk about her new Christmas EP, you can fast forward about an hour and a half because that's deep. When Jesse will be done.
But you're about to miss one of the wildest things you've ever heard.
Buckle up.
He turned his hat around for this.
Yeah, he's getting ready.
He is locking in.
I need to be locked into this microphone. So I've read so much about this and listened to so many perspectives.
I haven't. Mine is just listening to you. So you tell me what you've learned. Tell us.
Okay, so squaring this with a Christian worldview is obviously critical, right? So I've read a lot of writings about what transpires in chapter 6 of the book of Genesis when watchers descend on Mount Hermon, which is one of those kind of, like Cameron, you were suggesting the possibility of like thin places where our realm and the supernatural realm intersect, right? So the watchers descend. It's like 200 of them. This is recounted in Genesis 6 and more in detail in the book of Enoch. Now, the book of Enoch is non-canonized, so it's not in the Protestant canon. It's in other denominational Christian canons, but Jesus himself references the book of Enoch numerous times. And so it's not totally discredited text. It just wasn't one of the books that made the final cut of the Protestant Bible at the Council of Nicaea. But for historical purposes, it does contain references, like I said, that even Jesus himself made note to. But Genesis 6 and the book of Enoch recount the watchers coming down to Mount Hermon. And essentially, these 200 watchers made a deal with some of the leaders. And they said, if you allow us to marry your daughters, we will give you secret technology. There was some sort of technological transfer that happened. The offspring of the watchers and these men became what have become known as like the Nephilim. So a sort of a human angelic hybrid. And those Nephilim were giants. So when Joshua and Caleb went into the promised land and they said, we were like grasshoppers to them. They were huge. They said potentially Goliath was the offspring or descendant of the Nephilim. Mm-hmm. And the theory is after the flood, God kind of, sent,
He did a Control-Alt-Delete. He's like, okay, there's a bunch of weird stuff happening. Let me go ahead and erase this real quick. Reset.
Yeah, because essentially these sort of hybrids took over the world because they had technology and they're also bigger and stronger and more intelligent. But some of them obviously survived if Joshua and Caleb encountered them post-flood. And so the kind of reckoning for those watchers was they were cast into the earth. And so some of the theory involves maybe we think of the idea, we have a very binary understanding of supernatural beings. Either they're angels or demons. And we assume that demons are fallen angels, even though the Bible never really indicates that fallen angels are actually still angels who can take physical form. You never see like a demon take physical form in the Bible. They always possess something. But angels, we see they have that ability. Right. And so part of the theory is it's these watchers that were cast into the earth are still kind of interacting with humanity. And the watchers that are kind of watching over the earth are still interacting in their own way as well. And so what we're seeing is kind of a narrative that's been playing out since the Old Testament. Now, I'll say for a long time, I was 70% believing that all of this was just advanced government programs, but I'm increasingly open to the idea that this non-human intelligence is something either like biblically supernatural or beings from another planet.
The beings from the other planet thing is the least likely to me because we are but a speck amid billions and trillions of stars, which have more billions and trillions of planets. The likelihood that beings from another physical planet found us and is just hanging around without interacting with us, really, just like kind of popping in and out. That just seems so odd to me. That's the least likely, in my opinion. I do think it's interesting that a lot of sightings are very near military installations.
Yeah.
So I do think there is credence to some of the sightings and interactions that people have had that you said, this is dark tech, and I mean, a lot in Virginia, a lot near Area 51. I mean, honestly, like there just is. That's people seeing weird stuff. And so like, I like that's easy. This spiritual stuff. And even if you watch Skywalker Ranch, I don't think that's a portal to some other planet.
Yeah.
I think it's a portal to another plane. And if you're a Christian, a spiritual plane. And that is where they're, spiritual and natural are interacting. And we don't have an explanation for it because we know in part and we see in part.
Yeah, we see through the glass dimly, like Paul says. I think it's something that the church, Big C, is going to need to be more open to reckoning with in the near future. Because I also feel like it's a taboo topic, and it has been for a long time, but it's literally being discussed by congressional leaders. And think about the implications it has for people of faith. It's massive. But it's also something that's largely ignored because it has been such a fringe topic for a long time.
Well, I also think it's been ignored, like, especially within the last week, I haven't seen a ton of people talk about it because I think in a lot of people's minds, they don't understand or they don't see the potential implications this could have because, like, I saw someone, I think, made a TikTok about it, kind of joking about unless these alien or, this extraterrestrial, whatever it is, intelligent life is going to come do my taxes for me, I don't really care. Like, my day-to-day life is not going to change much. And I think that's where people, if they seem disinterested, it's because they don't understand, like, what does this have on impact of my life, whether or not they've been here for centuries or this is some sort of alien life or it is dark tech. Like, how does my life change? And I think that is something that the church can address is there are implications for it and we need to talk about them.
This isn't new. I mean, every civilization through history has stories of supernatural encounters and beings and angels and all of it. I mean, it is like ancient. It's the theory that this was here and is not of earthly origin. I think that I probably misspoke when I said what they stated on the record. I believe the question was more like, can you confirm or do you believe what we're encountering is intelligent life, not of earthly origin, and not necessarily from another planet or whatever? And that's what they were saying. Yeah, no, that's what we're seeing. History tells that story. For thousands and thousands of years.
But the only difference is, and the reason I think it's more critical to have intelligent Bible-based conversations about the topic is we're at a point in history where our ability to monitor our environment electronically and the evolution of technology is at a point where definitive proof could actually be broadcast to the world, not just rumors or people word of mouth sightings and stories. There could literally be physical evidence that is presented to the public. And I kind of feel like I said, the church is a little bit behind the eight ball on this, where we're not at a point where these are great campfire stories or, dude, I think I saw something. We might actually have physical evidence in the near future.
I know you've read deeply and listened to all these podcasts and stuff. Is this an explanation for like ancient Egypt? Like the modern scientists can't understand how they had the technology to build that mathematically perfect massive objects back then, that this could be an explanation for that?
There's megaliths all over the world that we don't have explanations for. That ancient Egypt, I think, is the most well known, but all through Central America, there's pyramids.
I know there was an Indiana Jones about that. I think it was the fourth one.
Yeah, but something.
And Shia LaBeouf was racing motorcycles through the jungle to find
Let's just hope
the
it
origin.
leads back. Let's just hope it leads back to that, because that would be a thrilling conclusion to all this. That the actor Shia LaBeouf, for some reason, gets in a motorcycle chase, and he is the one that presents the evidence to humanity convincingly. And at the next pastors conference, they're like, "Man, we really should have addressed this sooner than Shia LaBeouf blew the lid off this thing." No, but the theory is so if you watch, there's a Netflix show, Ancient Apocalypse, with Graham Hancock, and he presents evidence he goes to all these sites of these ancient megaliths that we don't really have an explanation for how ancient people with basically stone or Bronze Age tools were able to create buildings with not only unbelievable precision, but astrological alignments that we don't know how they understood. And so what he suggests is there was an advanced lost civilization that was destroyed in what he calls the Younger Dryas theory, which is a meteor basically wiped out almost every piece of intelligent life on the planet. Now, in kind of the Christian narrative, that would be the global flood, that all of this was lost in the flood. There were remnants, but we're 5,000 years by, I don't know at what time, thousands of years after that the secrets to all that have been lost. But if you're looking at a biblical origin story for a potential lost advanced civilization, the Old Testament gives a pretty compelling narrative.
And it would be interesting too that even just, again, it's just this top of my mind. I'm sure there's scholars who have talked about this, but the idea that plagues, supernatural phenomenon, was kind of the only way to get Pharaoh's attention, maybe because he was used to dealing with hyper intelligent supernatural type things. Yeah. So we have to throw a bunch of frogs at you from the sky, the river run red. I mean, because I always thought, God, did you really have to go that crazy? I mean, that was a little over the top. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But maybe it's because in ancient Egypt, they were dealing at higher planes, and they had, I don't know.
Well, there's Sumerian texts that have a different narrative, but one that talks about essentially an advanced civilization or advanced beings. They call them the Anunnaki, enslaved humanity, much like the theories are that the Nephilim got out of control and had humanity under their thumb. And that was the part of the reason why the flood came. And so different versions of this have popped up in different religious texts. So I don't know. Talking about it out loud, it sounds like this is just bonkers.
Well, now it's in the Congressional record. I mean, it's some of this.
To your point, Emily, if you just scanned headlines, this should be the front page of everything.
It comes off of the Weekly World News, those made up rags at the grocery store checkout in the 90s of alien faces superimposed on shaking hands with Bill Clinton sort of a thing. And it's just I think that's why people aren't taking this seriously. Cause we were kind of ingrained that any talk of extraterrestrial or, extraterrestrial, literally non-earthly origin life is just kooky. And it's just silly Photoshop work.
Well, that's the other conspiracy theory behind the conspiracy theory, is that a lot of these sightings started ramping up in the 1940s after we started tinkering around with atomic bombs, and started developing the ability to completely destroy the earth, that maybe some of these beings were making themselves known at that point. And the people at the top levels of the intelligence community decided that if the president just came out and made the announcement, hey, there are aliens, it could cause a social collapse. It would be so paradigm shifting that if it happened like that, religions could collapse, social order could be lost. And so there was a decades long strategy to ingrain in people a familiarity with the concept through movies, through, rags at the grocery store, through TV shows, through books, and the idea of aliens just became permeated in pop culture. And then instead of the president coming out one day and making a large public disclosure, they would just leak information out over time through hearings, through document leaks, to the point where people just get somewhat comfortable with the idea, so that when there is some sort of formal disclosure, it's not this shock to the social system and a completely worldview shattering idea. It's just like, okay, that makes sense. That's the other. I don't know if there's no way to confirm that, but I've also heard that theory being floated around.
That one does make sense to me, though, because like I said, like I've grown up with so many like movies about these alien stories, or like people will share their own alien stories, and it's like I've heard it so much that it's like, okay, whatever. One of my like favorite SNL skits is the alien abduction one with Ryan Gosling and Kate McKinnon. Like, obviously that's like a joke and it's ridiculous, but it's like I've heard those stories. So then for it to be confirmed, like, hey, there's actually some truth in this, it's like, oh, okay, cool. Like, I don't have to rationalize as much.
It's not a totally foreign idea anymore. You grow up with the far off possibility that, hey, maybe. And so that's the other kind of interesting, like I said, kind of conspiracy behind the conspiracy, but who knows? All I know is I've been enjoying watching the congressional hearings, and I encourage everyone to do their civic duty and watch them as well. You want to see a military general up there talking about them aliens. Trust me, it's great TV.
Got it. All right. Well, we have a great show in store for you today. Coming up later, we talk to Riley Clemmons. She has a new Christmas EP. Also, are we allowed to listen to Christmas music yet? Because I'm going to play clips from it. So, are we allowed? Friday. It's 6 days before Thanksgiving.
We're on the bubble here.
I have friends like the night of Halloween, they were already posting their Christmas playlist. Like, I know people they've been listening to it for weeks and they're just waiting for everyone to catch up.
All right.
Don't love that, but we're 6 days out. We're not Halloween. This is gimme putt range.
And it's a late Thanksgiving, so you kind of want to have a full.
It is a late Thanksgiving.
You want to have a full 4-week, month-long Christmas season.
Yeah.
Then this is the episode to kick it off. There you go.
There we go.
All right, and at the end of the show, we have your feedback. But stay tuned after this break. It's Relevant Buzz. Well, today's show is brought to you in part by World Vision. We all subscribe to a lot of services that make our lives easier and more entertaining. But as followers of Jesus, we should want to seek first the kingdom of God in all areas of life, including our spending. That's why I'm so excited about a new kind of subscription through World Vision. Not one for myself, but for others. It's called Believers for World Change. And when you sign up, you're joining a community of change makers working to help end extreme poverty around the world and here at home. World Vision is a Christian humanitarian organization that works with children, families, and communities to reach their God-given potential, focusing on things like gender equality, spiritual nurture, and access to clean water, education, job training, and healthcare, so the entire picture of poverty can be addressed. Let's subscribe to something new together. Subscribe to World Change today at worldvision.org. Again, that's worldvision.org. All right, it's time for
Relevant Buzz.
Tell us what's happening at the intersection of faith and culture this week, Emily. No alien talk.
Okay, well, let me scratch everything I was about to say then. The first thing I want to start with is actually some Broadway news.
Ooh.
I know, exciting.
Covering the Broadway beat. All right.
Yeah, we're not talking about Wicked, which is out this week. We're talking about a much smaller Broadway production, which is Tammy, Faye, which is an Elton John produced musical about, our favorite 80s televangelists. So this musical premiered earlier this month on November 14th. And about 1 week after it premiered, it was announced that it will be closing in 2 weeks on December 8th, making it the fastest closing show of the current Broadway season.
Wasn't the budget like $25 million or something?
Yeah, $25 million.
$22 million. Yeah.
Elton John, and it lasted 1 week before they announced they're closing it. So
yes.
If you want to go see it, you got another week. But I'll tell you this. This is a true story. I'm going to be in New York next weekend with Derek. And I was like, oh, it would be a fun novelty. It would be a funny story if Derek and I went and saw Tammy Faye, the musical, the week before it closed.
Yeah.
And then I watched the clips of it, and it looks awful. Not like kitschy Nicolas Cage and Left Behind awful. It looks like, why would I pay $99 to sit through this awful? You know what I mean? So I'm not going to go.
The thing.
And that is pretty much what all the reviews have said. Because like it's gotten a lot of the critics who saw it said it was like bland and just kind of like a mishmash and like just
doesn't know what it wants to be.
Yeah.
It's not campy enough, or it's not sincere enough. There's no heart. Like, what is this mess? So
yeah,
because the subject matter, I think, is legitimately compelling. I think she is one of the more compelling pop culture figures in the last like 50 years because she rode this intersection of like televangelism and TV stardom,
scandal and heart.
Yeah. But also a reckoning with her beliefs and an embrace of celebrity culture, a cross-cultural appeal. I'm a noted Righteous Gemstones fan, and I think the world of televangelism is ripe for parody, but also ripe for genuine introspection, which I think that show actually does pretty well at times. And it seems like, man, they must have just fumbled the ball here. Must just be poorly executed because the subject matter seems pretty compelling.
Well, the Jessica Chastain Tammy Faye movie from a few years ago is phenomenal. It's phenomenal. Yeah. And it captured the heart and the side of her backstory, what she went through and where she went later in life. That was like the untold narrative. We just think of Jim and Tammy Faye and her makeup and her crying, right? We don't really know the person. And Jessica did a fantastic job telling us about the person. I assumed with the Elton John musical Broadway production, it would lean into the camp. And I'm telling you, if you watch these clips, you can go over to relevantmagazine.com and watch them. It's not, and it's boring.
I'm so confused how they spent $22 million to produce it. That's what I want to know. Because it's like, I'm not seeing a $22 million production here. I'm seeing, I don't want to say like my high school theater production, maybe like a college theater, local theater.
And
like
that church in Canada that does all those crazy Easter services does a better production than what we saw.
It reminds me of the old Chris Rock joke after Blair Witch came out back in the late 90s. And they're like, this movie made $100 million and it only cost $100,000 to make. I was watching it just thinking, where'd they spend $100,000 on this? Like, that's kind of the same thing with this. But it's kind of the same thing with the musical. How do you spend $22 million and just botch something so badly? Like, where did the money go?
I mean, my thing is like, they're obviously writing it and rehearsing it over years, essentially. They're writing these songs and they're putting them through. And there's so many people involved and there's so much time involved. And nobody thought, this isn't that good. Like, that's what I don't understand is like, if the song doesn't land or the choreography doesn't land or the set design doesn't land, why didn't somebody say something while they had time to rethink it or improve it? Like, I don't get it. I don't get it. Yeah. But anyway, it's closing 1 week. It's going to lose. I think the first week, Emily, our write-up said that the entire first week it made $300,000.
$374,000. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't even know what that fraction is of the 22 million, but it is
1/60th, give or take.
Sure. Yeah. There you go. So it's not doing well. I think it is probably the pure definition of a passion project for Elton John, who apparently is the world's biggest Tammy Faye fan. Good for him.
I wonder if they knew each other. Do you know?
I mean, they overlapped. I don't know.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
I hope they were friends.
What else you have?
Anyways, okay, moving on. I got some more music news. Coachella dropped their 2025 lineup this week, and it is the perfect 2015 lineup that I've ever seen because it is probably one of the most dated headliners like that I've seen in a really long time. The three ones that we've got are Lady Gaga, who I assume is making an attempt, back from her horrendous Joker 2 movie. Then we've got Green Day, who's filling the typical nostalgic spot, which is fine. Not really my pick. And then we've got Post Malone. I don't have any strong feelings about him either. It's just not a lineup that I'm particularly excited about in the year 2025. Am I the only one feeling this way?
I feel like you could go with one of those three and then fill the other two headliners with younger or newer, fresher artists.
Or somebody cool. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's fine to have one of them. I think it's the Green Day. I don't think the nostalgic spots are working anymore. Like, who is that for? Who's going to Coachella to see? If you want to go see Green Day, I'm sure they tour pretty frequently. I don't feel like people are going to Coachella to go see a band like Green Day or the Foo Fighters or a band that
never stopped touring. Yeah. I remember, like, Jesse and I have a lot of festival experience. And I do remember, like, whenever they would do some of the nostalgic ones, they brought the Postal Service back after 10 years of not playing any shows. They reunited The Cure. They reunited Outkast one year. And that was like the nostalgia spot, and then you had like the legit. I agree with you. Green Day's playing. You can go see Green Day. This isn't a special event. So it's just a dated band at this point. Yeah.
It's also funny because on the same day that Lady Gaga is headlining, the next spot on the lineup is Missy Elliott, who is also a great artist, is still touring. I'm like, why did she not get a headliner spot? Like, there was some choices made on this year's lineup that are just really having me questioning if Coachella knows what they're doing anymore.
Well, I mean, last year Coachella I think it was the first year it didn't sell out. Like everybody, the narratives, the think pieces were, it's the death of the festival. Coachella's over. I expected that they just lost their way a little bit, and that this year they would come back and say, we are the LA taste-making, trend-setting festival.
Yeah.
They're going to have the Chapel Roans. They're going to have the exclusive experience with some awesome artists that isn't going to do that anywhere else. Mm-hmm. And then they come back with Green Day and Missy Elliott and Lady Gaga. And I was just like, what? And Post Malone is filling stadiums every day of the year. I mean, it's like, if you like Post Malone, you've seen him already. Like, what?
That's how I feel about this lineup. Is there are a few artists on there that I do like. I don't want to go to Coachella to see them. I'd rather just see them on their own tour because it makes more sense to me to do that.
But if you're going to put like a nostalgic retro artist on the lineup, put them in the middle of the afternoon. When it's, I remember one time, Cameron, we saw like Third Eye Blind in the middle of the afternoon at Lollapalooza. I had zero interest in seeing them, but you hear some of those radio songs that just everyone knows. You're like, look, it's 4:00. I was watching good bands all morning. We're getting ready for the night show. Why not just have one of these fun old school artists peppered in, but don't make that the headliners.
No, I agree. I know exactly. There was the amphitheater show, and like that amphitheater at Lolla had like Nas one year at 4:00.
Yeah.
And it's just like, that's when you want to see Nas. It's just like a little, oh man, that'd be fun to like see that dude from, I agree with you. But Coachella, man, I'd be shocked if they sell out again this year.
Get it together.
So we'll see.
Yeah.
Austin City Limits is doing just fine. South by is a different thing, but it's doing just fine. Lolla's doing just fine.
Pitchfork Festival is not doing it again this year. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah. Interesting. All right. What else you got?
Yes. Moving on to some TV news. I've got some information about the first ever pickleball TV show, which I feel like we all knew was going to happen eventually. And, when I first heard this, I kind of rolled my eyes because who cares about pickleball? But I'm actually pretty happy with this show. It's called The Wager, and it was created by E! News host Jason Kennedy.
Oh, friend. He's our friend.
Yeah, friend of the show. And so in The Wager, Jason partners with a pickleball pro named Wes Burrows to face off against a bunch of Jason's famous friends. So you've got Taylor Lautner, Patrick Schwarzenegger, Sean Johnson. We've even got Chad Veach, just a very wide range of people who he plays against. And before each match, the team sets some sort of high stakes wager, which is sometimes the losers have to make a charitable donation or...
I was to say, I thought Christians can't gamble.
We kind of skirt around it with the things that they do. Yeah, the wagers, like I said, charitable donations or a social media takeover. So, quote unquote on the high stakes wagers over there. But, so they play for that. And then in between sets, they sit down and talk about life. So there's a little bit of silliness and some substance. And I actually have been enjoying it a lot.
Listen, no shade to Chad or Jason or any of those folks. You do you, and I'm glad it's successful. but I am sorry. I am staunch in this. Pickleball is the lamest trend that has caught on in culture in my lifetime. I'm going that far. It has gone to, if you're under the age of 65 playing pickleball, pick up a tennis racket, go to a racquetball sport, play a game with real speed. It's for the elderly. Have you ever even watched pro pickleball on TV? Even the pros can't make it interesting. It is so boring and lame. Elementary school children and the elderly are the only ones that should be playing it. Play a real racket sport. I'm sorry. It is people acting like pickleball is this positive social phenomenon. No, it is the watering down of any kind of hobby. It is the lowest common denominator of athletic competition. And I will die on this hill. Pickleball is lame. I'm sorry. Again, I'm not saying anything about the quality of the show. If you like it, good for you. This is just my take on the sport in general. Sorry.
Tell us how you really feel.
We prepare for the show. We talk about, we go through content that Relevance covered that week. What do we want to bring on Buzz?
Yeah.
What are we going to do for Slices on other episodes? This came up in our planning discussion, and I thought, it's a good show. Jason's done a good job with it. Some of our friends are on it. Yeah, great. It is a good show, honestly. But I thought we have to bring this up because I just know Jesse has opinions when we say the word pickleball. Emily, just say the word pickleball and see what happens. And you did not disappoint.
Even the name you can't say in a dignified way. I got a good workout today playing pickleball. Did you? I highly doubt that was a good workout.
I will say
I'm sorry. Every part about it is cringe. Every part about pickleball is cringe.
I will say the actual pickleball match is probably the least interesting part of the show. So I can't disagree with you on that.
Shocking. You have to throw in high stakes
it's just
gambling.
A premise. It's a premise for Jason to have in-depth conversations with thoughtful friends. That's all he's doing.
Exactly. It's the hot ones. It's the hot ones with 100%. Pickleball. I get it.
You're standing on a pickleball court instead of burning your lips. That's all it is.
Have you ever actually played it, Jesse? Like, has anyone invited you to come play a pickleball game?
Who would dare?
No, and I never would. Yeah, I go to my community rec center in the mornings before work. And the basketball courts there, I used to shoot around every once in a while, but the basketball courts now are taken over by pickleball tournaments with the elderly. And I'll peek in. I've never seen one exciting moment of one exciting game. It's like watching Wii tennis in real life. They're just rocking back and forth. And it's a slow, boring thing. You ever watch somebody play Wii tennis and just watch the screen? It's the most boring video game to watch. You're never going to watch like Twitch streamers streaming Wii tennis because it's lame to watch. It's the same thing with pickleball. I could go all day on this. I'm sorry.
Oh, I know you could.
I literally was like, just say pickleball and see what happens. I cannot.
We've done so many shows together, Jesse. I actually don't know if I've ever seen you this passionate about something.
I can't believe
he wasn't even this passionate
over.
About aliens being confirmed as real.
Aliens, you're like, I don't care about that. Pickleball has to die.
It's more baffling to me that it is as baffling as it is that alien discourse isn't more talked about. It's far more baffling that pickleball is so talked about. I'm sorry. Has anyone watched it? Has anyone played it? It is lame. Everything about it is lame. The rackets are lame. The name is lame. The sport itself is slow and literally made for people towards the end of their life that have had their hips replaced. I'm sorry. It is not good TV. The sport itself, and it's not a good activity.
What do you want Congress to do about it?
If we're going to go raid retirement communities for like outdoor activities, why can't we bring back? I want to see a resurgence of the big shuffleboard. That's fun. Like you go on a cruise ship or something. Yeah. Like with the, not in a bar, not that shuffleboard, not the table
I'm talking
shuffleboard.
Remember over here down the street from my office, we went and played. And how fun was that? That
is so fun. It's a fun little game. It's not, and it's its own game. It's not like a lamer version of another sport like tennis or pickleball. Yeah.
What about bocce ball? If we're talking elderly sports,
let's go. Let's just raid all the sports from the local senior center and then make the hipsters like them. I like it.
Bingo's great.
Bingo is great. On a cruise ship, at random 2:00, they're going to do bingo, or you can just
you're in.
Sure. I'll fill out a card. Let's go.
They picked the lamest sport of all the elderly sports and elevated it to a place in pop culture that we seem to now have to care about. I've heard the term professional pickleball player numerous times this week in different contexts and different stories. How is it? I'm sorry. We can't. I'm just done with pickleball. I'm done with it. I will die on this hill. Pickleball is lame.
So even if you don't like playing it or watching it in real life, do watch Jason's show, The Wager, because it's more about conversation.
And you can just fast forward through the pickleball part.
The actual pickleball part,
Yeah.
And if you fast forward through the pickleball part while you're fast forwarding, it'll actually come close to the speed of an actual sport. But you have to fast forward in like double time for it to actually look exciting.
It'll kind of look like little tennis.
It'll kind of look kind of exciting.
Yeah. All right. What's the last thing?
Very last thing I want to share is that nobigdyl dropped his first ever live album this week called Unplugged Volume 1. Very cool, very vibey, and kind of the perfect thing to listen to no matter what you're doing, whether you're playing pickleball or reading up about aliens. So we're going to play one of the songs from the album.
Because Christ, he settled it, might be celibate, married. All of that stuff got chucked like Barry. Now my wife in therapy, I be fair. Need price we share when we fight for purity. All sincerity, scary, yeah. He been burning incense since 9 a.m. Alkaline water with the vitamins. Still he got a war raging inside of him. Lit the sage, but the pain won't go away. Came to my defense despite my infamy.
I love the idea that like we talked about last year, like NPR's Tiny Desk did a contest for artists to submit music to get considered. And Dylan did the song you just heard, that was his submission for the Tiny Desk contest. And it did really well. And he got voted number one fan favorite. I love the idea. I don't know if this is actually how this album originated, but I love the idea that he enjoyed doing that so much and kind of reinterpreting his music like that. And it was so well received that he's like, I should do that for a bunch of my other songs too. And like, that was the origin story because it's great. I love it. Acoustic hip hop to me is like unmatched. It's great. All right. No big deal. Go check it out. All right. That'll do it for
Relevant Buzz.
For more stories like that, check out relevantmagazine.com every day, where we are covering the intersection of faith, culture, and everything in between. Thanks, Emily. All right, stay tuned. Up next, after this break, Riley Clemmons joins us.
Can you quote Peter Griffin and St. Augustine? Are you a fan of Theo Von and the Nicene Creed? If so, Not the Sermon is the podcast for you. Join Jamie and Eric, a senior pastor and associate pastor, for a hilarious blend of comedy and theology. They roast church culture, parody modern worship, and discuss tough theological topics. This blend of the silly and the sacred is your new podcast obsession. Search for Not the Sermon anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Well, our guest today is Riley Clemmons. She's a Nashville-based Christian artist who you might know from her hits like Fighting for Me and For the Good. Now she's just released her first ever Christmas EP, Come Adore Him. We sat down with her to hear more about the new music and how she finds creative ways to find joy and peace in the midst of a crazy season. Here's our conversation with Riley Clemmons.
Well, you just released a Christmas EP, Come Adore Him, and now you're on tour with Michael W. Smith. It seems like you're doing a lot right now, which is exciting, but I'm curious, does it ever feel a little hectic some days?
You know, no, I'm such a Christmas girl to my core. And because I love Christmas so much, I feel like I thrive being busy this time of year. Just because, getting to put out Christmas music is one of my favorite things in the world. I've loved and cherished this season since I was a little kid. It's always been the time of year I looked most forward to and loved the decorations and all the cheerfulness and the colors and the music, and of course the heart of the season and what it's celebrating as well. But it's been so special to be busy doing all things Christmas. Being out on the road with the iconic Michael W. Smith. I grew up on his Christmas records. It's so crazy.
I wanted to ask, what has it been like touring with Michael W. Smith?
This is quite literally a dream come true. I'm not saying that in any other way than that is the cold hard facts. I grew up listening to Michael W. Smith, specifically all of his Christmas records. That was the soundtrack of my childhood Christmases. We always had his records on. And so I remember very early on when I first started putting out music and releasing songs, I get asked all the time, who's your dream collaboration? Who would you love to work with? And it was one of two answers every time. I would either say Michael W. Smith or Stevie Wonder. It was one of the two, but more often it was Michael W. Smith. And so it's a very surreal thing to be able to see the dream that came true, and the prayers and the desires of my heart being fulfilled in a really sweet, full circle way. It's really, really surreal.
Well, back to your music. I know you made a Christmas EP back in 2019. What made you want to make another one?
You know, the first Christmas EP I put out, I think it came out when I was 19, which is crazy. I'm 24 now, so a lot of life has happened. A lot of time has passed, and as my sound and my taste in music and vocality has changed and grown and evolved. I love making Christmas music, but I wanted to do something that captured the current season that I'm in, the growth that I've undergone as an artist and as a woman over the past handful of years. And so this year specifically, knowing that I'd be on the road with Michael, knowing that it would be all things Christmas, it felt like the perfect time to record one of my favorites and to write some Christmas songs. We wrote a handful of Christmas songs that hopefully in the near future you'll get to hear more of them, because there's so many I love. But one of my absolute favorites is a song called Come Adore Him. We put that song out this year, and it's been really special to play it on the road too.
What would you say is your favorite part about making Christmas music specifically?
Oh, there's so many things. I think naturally Christmas music lends itself to a different type of musicality. You know, it automatically is you hear the Christmas chords. It's sometimes the slang vernacular that we'll use in the studio. Let you hear these rich Christmas chords. I think naturally when you're making Christmas music, you can play into a bit more of the classic nostalgic sound, which is so fun to step into this time of year. I think there's a certain warmth that Christmas music exudes, and as a vocalist, it creates a really beautiful landscape to sing and emote. And yeah, it's one of my favorite things in the world. Also, I think one of my favorite parts of it too is seeing the visual of where people might be listening to this music around Christmas trees and lights with people they love, making new memories. I'm a sentimentalist. I love the feeling of nostalgia. I love the warm and fuzzies, and yeah, that's one of my favorite parts.
You know, earlier you mentioned how much you've gone through over the last few years, both as an artist and a human. And I'm curious, can you share what are some of the changes that you've walked through over the last few years?
Goodness. It's funny. Being in your 20s is crazy. That's what I've learned very quickly. It's not for the faint of heart. The past few years have taught me a lot. You know, there have been beautiful moments and there have been really hard moments. And it's funny how the most challenging moments tend to be the ones that God uses to grow you the most, is what I found to be true. I think that there has been a slow process, a beautiful process of learning who I am. I started making music and creating very young. I think that just naturally with new experiences, with experiencing really low lows, with experiencing heartbreak and rejection and getting knocked down, you figure out who you are when you learn how to get back up again. And you figure out what you're passionate about, what you want to say, what you like to make. I mean, my relationship with Jesus is so different than it was when I was 19. And I'm so grateful for that. You know, that not that there was anything wrong with my relationship with Jesus at 19. It's just, I know him so much better now. because I talk to him more, I go to him more. The lessons that life has handed to me has pushed me to be more honest and vulnerable with the Lord and with myself and with my friends and with my family. And I think that's reflected in the music that I'm making. I think sonically, I feel like I found home base a little bit more. I feel like I'm not trying as hard to be something. I am simply learning what it's like to just be Riley and what that sounds like and looks like and feels like. And it's a whole process, but it's very surreal to get to.
I think you perfectly summed up life in your 20s just now, because it really is like a roller coaster. Do you happen to have any encouragement for your peers who are maybe experiencing the downside of a roller coaster right now?
I'm no stranger to a tough season. To be really candid with you, this year was filled with really hard moments where I really was at the lowest I've ever been in my life. And I found you learn a lot in those moments. But I would say to the person who feels like they're bottoming out, like they don't know how it's going to get any worse, they also don't know how it'll get any better. Give it one more day. Just give it one more day. When you're in those seasons where things feel too heavy, like you can't go on, when life feels heavy like that, instead of thinking about, oh my God, how am I going to get through this week? You think, okay, let's just start by getting through the next day. And if the day's overwhelming, just get through the next hour. The hour's overwhelming, get through the minute. Go second by second if you have to. But I think that honestly, the truth is feelings go away, and it won't be that hard forever. And most high, intense feelings of emotions I've found exist on a 7-minute bell curve. So if you can ride out 7 minutes, I always say that to myself when I'm really not doing well. I just say, okay, let me give it 7 minutes and let the feelings subside a little bit. I would encourage people to not give up and to find people you can talk to and be honest to. Find people who will let you talk about the same thing over and over again until you get it out of your system.
That was Riley Clemmons. Make sure to check out her new EP, Come Adore Him. All right, after this break, we have your feedback.
Well, Relevant has a lot happening this year, and we don't want you to miss a thing. Make sure to sign up for our newsletter right there on the front page at relevantmagazine.com, and we'll send you our top 5 trending stories sent to your inbox every weekday. We'll also send you a weekly podcast newsletter with the latest episodes, some fan extras, and first peeks at the new shows that we're going to be rolling out throughout this year. Make sure to sign up. It's the best way to keep in touch with everything we got going on.
Okay, it's time for your feedback. Last week, we asked you, what's your dream trip or destination? Why did we ask that? What were we talking about?
You and Derek told us about y'all's trip to Colorado. And so,
that's right. Yeah, off the grid, riding horses to the top of a mountain. It's pretty great. Okay, so you hit us up on X at Relevant Podcast. Here's a few of our favorites.
Well, Brittany says, my husband and I are road tripping from North Carolina to the Grand Canyon next summer, ! We are planning on stopping at some very random roadside places along the way, smiley emoticon. Brittany seemed pretty excited about this upcoming road trip, and I'm going to venture a guess here, because I think the Grand Canyon would be very cool. I've never been, always wanted to go, but I'm taking a plane if I go. I don't know if Brittany's ever been on a long road trip because she's talking so enthusiastically about it. It's like someone who is fascinated with the idea of a road trip. Coming from someone who's driven across the country several times, you're going to be 3 hours into this road trip, and then you're going to look at your map app and realize you're not even close, and that this sounds way more fun than it is. Driving for over 10 hours, multiple days in a row. I hope everything's good with you and your husband, Brittany. I'm sure you guys have an adventurous, fun relationship. This could stretch, people. I'm just warning you. It is a long time in the car. Consider a flight and take a couple of trips to novelty places in your area before you buckle in from North Carolina to the Grand Canyon, because it's like 35 hours in the car.
Well, I think like splitting it up with like stopping in little I don't know, kitschy towns or something like that. No, because you do that one day and you go to some kitschy place and you're like, every place we stop
elongates this trip. We are plowing through. We just want to get there. Cameron, you've done multiple road trips.
Oh yeah. I like them better in theory than in the middle of them. Exactly like you said.
Yeah.
It's like after a few hours, I'm ready to be wherever it was. Yeah. Why did I choose to drive? You know, that kind of thing.
I've done a lot of road trips with my family too. I think getting there is always fine, especially if we stop in places. Once I've gotten there and we're driving back, then I'm like, I don't really want to stop in any places. I just want to get back home at that point. So I do get that part. The first half I think is enjoyable.
This one's crazy. Ryan Plain, longtime listener, he's written it a bunch of times. He says he's been to over 30 countries, all 7 continents, both polar circles. So you're saying a dream trip. Wow. Where does he go? He wants to go to space. He wants to be weightless. But here's the other crazy thing. He says, or I want to go back to Antarctica with this a different experience. And he put a link to white-desert.com adventures ultimate Antarctica. Guess how much this 16-day Antarctica trip costs per person? I clicked on the link.
16 days. It's got to be at least $1,000 a day. So I'll say $16,000.
Right. He can't afford it because this trip is $2 million per person.
What?
Look at the website. It just looks like a trip to Antarctica. $2 million? What?
To go look at some ice?
Who's your target audience for this?
I would think for $2 million, you could just build a vacation home in Antarctica.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not going to stay in an igloo. I'll own an igloo. I'll buy a lot. Yeah.
Here's another one. I'm going to sound like a Debbie Downer here, but Reed said Iceland for the Northern Lights. It would be cool to do a solo trip, but I don't trust myself enough to not get lost, LOL. So definitely convince a friend to join me. There's another one. Iceland's very far away. I feel like you get there and in about 10 minutes into looking at the Northern Lights, you're like, okay, I got it. Pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Iceland's not far away at all. It's like there's direct flights from like Orlando. I can go there for $99.
Well, but like you fly there and then I mean I've never been, so
if
I don't know. But like,
for
you have to drive then to get to where like the Northern Lights are.
And if you're going just for if the primary thing is Iceland for the Northern Lights, it's like you ever been to a fireworks show that's a little overdone on the 4th of July, and in like 5 minutes in, you're like, wow, this is pretty impressive. Another 10 minits go by and you're like, is this the grand finale? And you're looking at your watch and this is a long fireworks show. I got the idea here. I think the Northern Lights would be like that. They're cool, but I don't know if it warrants a whole trip. Maybe some YouTube videos.
Maybe you can do a few more things. I like Sarah's. She said, my girlfriends and I have been talking about visiting some Greek island to live out our Mamma Mia fantasy. And I fully support that. I did do that once when I went to Greece. My friend and I, we walked around and we felt like we pretended like we were in Mamma Mia. Didn't meet a hot Greek man, so I didn't completely fill out the fantasy, but it was a great time. Fully suggest.
Well, there's a lot more where that came from. If you want to go check it out, check out our replies. Okay, it's time for this week's
editorial question of the week. Hey.
Jesse told us his subtle feelings, his nuanced feelings about pickleball earlier. We want to know, what is a popular trend that you think is super lame? A bunch of people like it. You don't. Hit us up on X and tell us yours. You're basically asking all the curmudgeons to come out, Jesse. With this question.
As they should.
Okay.
This is their moment.
So,
don't hold back.
Hit us up and we'll read our favorites on next week's show. Well, before we wrap up, I want to thank Riley Clemmons for joining us today. Make sure to check out her new Christmas EP, Come Adore Him. It comes out today. Also, make sure to check out relevantmagazine.com. We are covering a lot of stuff. Follow us on Instagram. We're posting a lot more there if you have noticed. And, all the other socials as well. All right. On that note, we'll wrap it. I'm Cameron Strang.
I'm Jesse Carey.
I'm Emily Brown.
We'll see you on Tuesday. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Thanks for listening to the Relevant Podcast. Check out our features, interviews, and news updates every day at relevantmagazine.com. And make sure to follow Relevant on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for the latest. For more great podcasts, browse the shows on the Relevant Podcast Network, which you can find at our site. And while you're there, don't miss the all-new era of Relevant Magazine. A new issue releases every other month at relevantmagazine.com.
It is so boring and lame.
Relevant Podcast Network.